Autonomous existence of man amid natural environment. A modern man, placed in wild conditions, badly seeing in the darkness, deprived, according to animal standards, of the sense of smell, with a tender body not protected with hair and a layer of fat, usually comes out of extreme situations as a winner. This happens thanks to the great will of man, his desire to live, as well as thanks to the skill of using the experience and knowledge accumulated by his predecessors and contemporaries. What should one undertake to save his life? How to survive? How to obtain water and food? How to find one's bearings in any area correctly? How to make a fire and protect oneself from heat or cold. All this knowledge and skill is important and priceless for surviving. Let's examine the questions of terrain orientation. Let's recall that orientation is the skill of determining the sides of the horizon, one's position relatively to the local landmarks and relief elements, finding the necessary direction and sticking to it the whole way. Orientation by map and compass is not very complex, but unfortunately these instruments are not always at hand. Instead of them, your guide afield will become a good memory, skills and abilities that you've managed to acquire earlier, and working logical thinking. Orientation by the sun. In the northern hemisphere, the north direction can be determined by standing with one's back to the sun at noon. The shadow will point out the direction to the north. The west will be to the left, the east to the right. Local noon may be determined with the help of a vertical polynomial with the length of a half or 1 meter according to the least length of its shadow on the surface of Earth. One should also remember that at 6-7 a.m. the sun is in the east and at 7 p.m. in the west. Orientation by the stars. In the northern hemisphere, the north direction can be determined with the help of the North Star. For this, one should find the constellation of the Great Bear with the distinctive position of the stars in the form of a scoop with a handle. One should draw an imaginary line through the two outermost stars of the scoop and mark on it the distance 5 times greater than the segment between these stars. The direction on it will correspond to the north direction. Determination of the cardinal points by means of a watch. The watches should be laid horizontally and turned so that the hour hand points to the sun. You should draw an imaginary line in the direction of the digit 1 in summertime too. The bisector of angle formed between this line and the hour hand shows the direction north-south, and at the same time, up to 12 hours, the south is to the right of the sun, and after 12 to the left. Orientation by local signs and objects. The south direction can be determined by the big accumulation of resin on the side of the trunk of conifer corresponding to the south. The snow melts faster on the southern slopes. The growth rings are wider on the southern side of stumps. The moss grows on the northern side of the tree. The flat side of the anthill is directed to the south. The altars of the Orthodox churches are directed to the east, the bell towers to the west. The elevated edge of the lower crossbar of the cross on the church's dome is directed to the north and downcast one to the south. After terrain orientation and determining the location, one should choose the route of coming out as settlement or thoroughfare. Compass orientation. The essence of compass orientation is the skill of finding and holding the pointed out or planned direction with the help of the compass and accurate arrival to the planned point. The magnetic azimuth of a horizontal angle measured clockwise between the direction to the north and to the object. In order to determine the direction afield by the given magnetic azimuth, one should place the compass bead's pointer on the count equal to the value of the given magnetic azimuth. The one should orient the compass by aligning the directions of the scale and magnetic needle to the north. Holding the compass in oriented position, one should note afield the remote object landmark along the sight line/bead. The direction to this object landmark will be the desired one. When working with a compass, one should hold it in the left hand, 10 centimeters lower than the eye level. The elbow should be closely pressed to the side for stability. From compass orientation, one should know the magnetic azimuths from every point to the next on the route, and the direction between the moving points in pairs of steps. For a man of medium height, a pair of steps equal to 1.5 meters. During movement, one goes from one point to another, sticking to the direction to the landmarks and keeping the count of the pairs of steps. In the initial and turning point, one should find the direction of movement by the given azimuth with the help of the compass. In this direction, one should choose and remember a more remote landmark or one situated nearer to the turning point of movement route. In an esplanade without landmarks, the direction of movement is held strictly by alignment. In this case, the direction of movement to the next point is chosen in the initial point with the help of the compass. Moving in this direction, one should set some signs at a certain intervals from each other. Periodically looking back at them, one should watch that the direction of further movement coincides with the imaginary straight line drawn through the signs left behind. For control, one should periodically check the direction of movement by the back azimuth and celestial bodies. Constantly compare the predetermined landmarks with the reaged ones. If you have a map, you can compare it with the terrain and movement route. At night, the shadow graph of local objects points shining far away and bright stars can be used as landmark. If you don't have such possibility, you may continually hold the compass while freely moving your hand in an oriented position before you. The movement direction will be the straight line going through the slot and bead. On losing the orientation, one should stop moving, remember the latest coordinates and moving direction. If it's fully impossible to determine the location, one should find any old river and move downstream or along the forest road. Any man can find himself face to face with nature, and his life will depend upon how he is prepared for this.